Welcome to This Explainer. Right now, we are looking at a national emergency, and honestly, the sheer scale of it is staggering. The 2026 wildfire season has absolutely exploded into a coast-to-coast crisis. It's pushing our national response capabilities right to their absolute limits. So today, we're going to unpack the whole situation, what's happening on the ground, why it's happening, and where the biggest threats are right now.
Let's start with a number. 3,629,723. That is the total acreage burned on large fires nationally so far this season. To put that into perspective, that is a massive, staggering chunk of land. But you know what's truly terrifying about that number? It's actually an undercount. Yeah, the National Interagency Fire Center is telling us that mapping in these heavily impacted regions is lagging way behind the explosive fire growth we're seeing on a daily basis.
To make sense of this crisis, here's our agenda for today. 1. National Level 5 Overview. 2. The Northwest Epicenter. 3. Great Basin and Rockies. 4. California and Southwest. And 5. The Weather and Future Outlook. Let's jump right in.
Starting with Section 1, our National Level 5 Overview, Unprecedented Resource Deployment. Right now, the U.S. is sitting at its maximum alertness level, Preparedness Level 5. We are actively tracking 94 uncontained large fires burning simultaneously across the country.
So what exactly does Preparedness Level 5 look like in the real world? Well, we basically have an entire small city deployed right now. We're talking over 30,000 personnel assigned to these incidents. We've got 1,870 engines on the ground actively battling flames, 645 individual fire crews working the lines, and 226 helicopters up in the air doing water drops and recon. The logistical puzzle of organizing, feeding, and deploying this kind of nationwide emergency response is literally immense.
Moving to Section 2, the Northwest Epicenter. Oregon and Washington are completely dominating this crisis right now. Get this, of those 94 uncontained fires nationally, an incredible 44 of them are burning right there in the Pacific Northwest.
Now, the data here completely flips what we usually expect right on its head. When you think of massive western wildfires, you probably think of California, right? Well, currently California has just over 13,000 acres burning. Washington has over 500,000. And Oregon? Oregon is absolutely dwarfing everyone else, with over 1.8 million acres consumed. They're actually approaching, and by some measures, already breaking their all-time state record.
Let's look a little closer at the specific megafires making up those wild numbers. The Big Grass Fire in Oregon is the single largest active incident in the whole country right now, over 540,000 acres, and it's less than halfway contained. Then you've got Roe Creek, also in Oregon, plus Kaiser Canyon and Sinlahaken up in Washington, all sitting well over 100,000 acres apiece. You can really see the variance here. We've got massive 500,000 acre footprints with containment levels just stubbornly stuck at 34 or 41%. It really shows you just how incredibly difficult it is to get a handle on incidents of this unprecedented scale.
A huge reason for these massive acreages is a type of extreme fire behavior called crowning. If you're not familiar with the term, crowning is when flames leap up and spread rapidly across the very top canopy of the trees or shrubs. They're driven by the wind and move entirely independently of the surface fire down below. It's like a wildfire racing across the treetops. We're seeing this exact phenomenon right now in zero containment incidents like Oregon's Wright Spring Fire and Washington's Little Giant Fire. It makes direct attacks by firefighters incredibly dangerous and, honestly, often impossible.
That brings us to Section 3, Great Basin and Rockies, Widespread Threats and Explosive Growth. This severe threat is spreading super fast across the interior West, hitting Idaho, Montana, Utah, and Nevada. Take the MM115 Highway 20 fire in Idaho as a prime example of this crazy volatility. On Saturday, this fire was sitting at roughly 300 acres. Today, it has exploded to almost 5,000 acres and is sitting at just 10% containment. That is a massive literal overnight multiplier. It's being heavily driven by wind and critically dry fuels, and it's actively threatening both structures and vital communication infrastructure in the region.
And the threat is really decentralized across all these states. Over in Utah, the Widemouth 2 fire has ripped past 114,000 acres with crowning and spotting. Nevada's Mouse Meadow fire, at 51,000 acres, is triggering active evacuations. Colorado is battling the Aspen Acres fire, which is leading their pack at over 100,000 acres. And Montana's Sand Creek fire is exhibiting extreme group torching, which is when whole clusters of trees ignite simultaneously in these massive fireballs. The sheer volume of critical infrastructure and communities threatened across the entire western interior right now is just staggering.
All right, moving to Section 4, California and the Southwest,
A surprising contrast. As we touched on earlier, California is currently reporting just over 13,000 acres across 5 active large incidents. To really put that into perspective, Oregon has single fires that are literally 40 times larger than California's entire large fire footprint right now. So while California definitely still has severe heat and some new starts showing extreme behavior, the overall acreage remains remarkably and thankfully low compared to up north.
It's a similar story down in the Southwest. Arizona has only 1 active large incident on the report, and New Mexico has 4, totaling just over 1,600 acres. This is largely thanks to the southwest monsoon weather pattern. But, it's totally a double-edged sword. On one hand, the storms and higher humidity reduce the chances of widespread ignitions in Arizona. But on the other hand, those same storms create really erratic, dangerous outflow winds. Meanwhile, over in New Mexico, isolated dry strikes, which is lightning without the rain, remain a massive hazard, especially in that steep, inaccessible terrain.
Finally, Section 5, Weather and Future Outlook, the driving factors of the crisis. If we want to understand how long we'll be stuck at level 5, we really have to look at the underlying environmental conditions.
Across the West, but especially in the heavily impacted Northwest and Great Basin, we are looking at an absolute perfect meteorological recipe for disaster. First up, searing temperatures consistently hitting 95 to over 100 degrees. Second, relative humidity is just plummeting down into the single digits, around 5 to 15%. Third, you've got gusty winds up to 30 miles per hour pushing through gaps in the Cascade Mountains, literally fanning the flames. And finally, poor overnight humidity recovery. That means the vegetation gets absolutely zero moisture relief at night, keeping those fuels critically dry and ready to burn 24/7.
And honestly, here is the most sobering data point in this entire report. 0 significant rain is forecast for the next 7 to 10 days across the heavily impacted Northwest. None. There is absolutely no natural relief coming for the landscape and no respite coming for the tens of thousands of personnel deployed on the ground.
Which leaves us with this final thought. With over 3.6 million acres consumed, explosive fire behavior spreading across the Rockies and Great Basin, and absolutely no significant rain in the forecast for that Northwest epicenter, how long can this preparedness level 5 hold before our national resources are stretched entirely past their breaking point? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and we'll keep analyzing the data as this crisis unfolds.